Yo, what is up, guys? It's Bankrupt Dope, back again with another video, and today we are back on some Chaos Zero Nightmare. And look, we gotta talk about something real quick. Just real quick. I ain't gonna hold you here long, okay? But before we hop in anything today, I hope you're having a good day, and if you're not having a good day, I hope your day gets better. You already know the drill. Now, we gotta talk about this game real quick, right? So, what are we talking about here? We're talking about our old girl Serenial, right? And how strong she is, right? And truth be told, generally it really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how strong she is, right? But we live in a day where people care about power creep a lot, right? So the question is, how are they gonna start balancing characters here on out, right? Because truth be told, Serenial on ease of use is better than most of the characters on this screen, right? All of these characters are good, right? Like I could argue my Yuki is probably still my best character on my account, right? I can argue that because I've been able to clear, I think, every piece of content in this game with her, minus that very last Sweet Dream boss, the little fox dude. But other than that, I think I've been able to clear every single thing in the game with my Yuki, right? So like obviously everything can be done, but that's not the point here. The point is ease of use, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to always have to bang their head against the wall for 20 plus hours to get something usable to then use to beat the content. That's just not viable to do all the time. There are people that are fine with that, but not everybody wants to do that all the time with every single character. Okay? And Serenial is that character, right? She doesn't require that many decks, and she's very easy to build. And once you get those couple of good builds for her, like she starts to cook, right? Like now I do have a lot of save data for her, right? But odd enough, the save data I use the most is one that I did not get in Lab Zero. But like yeah, all these save data and stuff like they're all to some degree somewhat usable just because of the way her gimmick works, which is breaking, right? And as long as these enemies are breakable, because at some point they're gonna just end up dropping enemies that don't have a break bar to kind of limit how great she's gonna be, right? That's just what they're gonna do. But the ability to break and the amount of damage she's doing makes her easier to use, for example, in like a Luke, right? Because Luke also has cards that are at a 0, right? But it's very particular to use him and also use the Cassius. But you don't necessarily need the Cassius, right? But you have to get a lot more technical to make his 0 cost cards really pop off at the same level that Serenial is. Her 0 cost cards are a lot easier and do a lot more damage than Luke 0 cost, for example, if you get what I'm saying, right? Like, same idea. You're both spamming cards, but one does significantly more damage and is not easier to build than the other one, right? Because obviously, I know that Luke can do crazy damage, but it requires a little bit more technical ability and deck building to get him to pop off, right? So the question is, what are they going to do with the next characters, right? Because everybody's big thing was Maylin, right? If you want to say Serenial is one right now, most people would still say that Maylin is still better than the rest of the cast, right? Because she can still big boom the enemies, and outside of her big boom, she still can do a lot of just damage in general, right? She uses her basic attack. She has all around. She uses everything. Whereas a lot of characters, they don't care about their basic attacks, right? A lot of characters are good. A lot of characters have big boom potential, but most people would still say Maylin is still number 2 outside of the people. There are people out there going to say she's not for the sake of they want to be different and well everybody's viable. That's true and all, but most people are still going to say Maylin is 2. If Serenial is 1, Maylin is still 2, right? And the question is, how are they going to balance the rest of the next characters coming up, right? The next of these characters need to be balanced. And to just be straight, they're going to have to be better than these characters, right? Because Chizuru is good with her infinite build. You know what I'm saying? Does she need it? No. Can you just make a normal build and win? Yes. Like I have a build like that focuses on just using a whole bunch of regular attacks, but like the damage fall off from using a normal deck to one of these decks, and how much more difficult it is to use a standard deck versus just an infinite hit deck is so insanely different, right? Like you feel like you're just doing a lot more work. And that's what it just feels like at the end of the day, right? It's like I'm doing all this extra work for very, very minimal turn and just barely scraping by in some of these fights, the way some of these fights are set up, especially when you're talking about, we take it over to the Galactic Disaster. We're talking about the Nebula Distortion, especially. feels like a lot of times using standard normal deck building, you're just scraping by to win. Even with my Yuki, I scraped by to win. And it just doesn't feel good, if I'm gonna be honest. It feels like you're doing all this work just to barely get by. But I digress. The question is, what are they gonna do for these next set of characters? I'm gonna be honest. If they're gonna do another DPS, they're gonna need to. Okay, they don't have to be on the same level as Yuki, right? Because they just drop them in a different type and make them better than the next type character. You can say that's all it needs, but we're on an interesting path because it might just be power creep the game from here on out. If everybody's gonna be on Serenial's level, which they might not, right? Because your argument could be that, well, she was a limited character, so that's the only reason she was that strong, which I think is fair. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily, me personally, I don't really have a problem with the characters these old characters who get power creep. For me, to me, that's not a crazy thing because at the end of the day, it's a gacha game, right? I think people forget the essence of a gacha game. That's kind of the whole. That's their whole MO is to make you spend money, and they're not gonna make you spend money or make you summon if the characters are relative to the last character. You get what I'm saying? Like, I think people forget that, and that's why power creep exists in these games because they can't. If the characters are relative, you have no incentive to summon, so they have to be worth it. And to be honest, they're gonna have to figure out a way to push the bar for Serenial and Meilin. The bar has to be pushed. And even the 4-stars, you have these people are making their 4-stars do 20,000s of damage. They're gonna end up figuring out a way to redo this game, is what I think, right? They're gonna have to start making characters in a different way, and they're gonna start making content in a different way if people are making non-DPS characters explode the content. Like, at the end of the day, that's gonna cook the creators of the game for some degree, right? Because if everybody starts cloning, like, what do you call it? I forgot one guy. He was making a video. I just recently saw it. He was in a stream. He made a video talking about his Maribel did like 20k damage. Like, she's just doing insane damage, right? And that's cool, right? Because in theory, these things make sense, right? It's a deck building game, and it makes sense. But the devs just don't ever see it that way most of the time. Most of the time, they're like, you're making the game a little too easy. You're giving people too many avenues to not spend money. So it's like, now we got to rework this content to where some of these things just won't work as efficiently as they used to. So chances are the content's going to get a decent bit harder. I would hope, it's going to have to get a decent bit harder outside of not talking about, once again, not referring to nebula distortion. That is the worst way of difficulty that they can do. That is, in my opinion, the worst way. Because that's just, you get one shot and that's it. Obviously, we have the tower coming up, but that would be the worst way to make the content harder on baseline, right? You're going to have to figure out a way to make the content a little bit more difficult. You're also going to have to figure out a way to make characters just better to get. Like, the next DPS sets of characters are going to have to really swing for the fences. Because it's not going to feel good to make characters that are on the level of a Haru or a Keiran. And yes, Keiran has high potential, but it's not that effective in the way that the game currently is, right? Like, yes, it exists, but it's not an effective way to play the game. It just isn't. I'm very curious to see what they're going to do going on, because I'm not going to say they back themselves in the corner, because me personally, I do not care if they make a character. The next characters are proceedingly stronger in each type. That's my opinion. That's how it should be. But the overall consensus of general gacha players nowadays and free-to-play players is that they don't want that. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to go about this from here on out. That's all I got to say. Like I said, it's going to be quick. Let me know how you feel. Let me know if you think Serenial is like low-key opening up the gates for some form of power creep, or you think he's going to be chilling. It's going to go back to normal once we get out of because at the end of the day, she's a limited character. So the next characters might just be normal. And they're not going to really be that crazy. So maybe it'll be easy to save, and that's all there is to it, right? Maybe there is nothing to it. It's just they gave everybody a strong character, and now you can just skip beyond your belief. Unless they're supports, of course. They start dropping a whole bunch of supports that might change the way people think. So maybe we're about to go into a support meta. Who knows? That's all I got to say. Thanks for watching. If you watch, let me know how you feel below. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.